understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa. And not just USAID, but other NGOs. You look at DFID, which is the British equivalent, and many other smaller ones. Their sole purpose was to act as if they're coming to rescue Africa. They're coming to fill in the gaps in government services, gaps in education, gaps in healthcare, gaps in humanitarian services. They're coming in the guise of addressing issues to do with human rights, issues to do with environmental protection and social justice. They are coming in claiming that they are introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people. And so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. They're talking about government advocacy. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good. But they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing. They are using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. I was listening to a program, I believe it was CNN, and I was jumping up and down. It was a government official from Hungary. He was echoing the same sentiments. He said they are happy USAID is leaving Hungary because they are always supporting opposition. Their form of government advocacy is supporting whoever can keep the government in a turmoil. The majority of some of the workers, now the average USAID worker may not realize it, but quite a few of them are also operatives who are underground, and their major agenda is to destabilize governments, destabilize countries. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education. Where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they are bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people. Let's look at what HIV/AIDS was used to do. We know of a program that was run out of South Africa where they actually were injecting people with the virus. The reason some of the AIDS virus spread as rapidly as it did in Southern Africa, there were some very dirty games being played on African people. They were using Africans as guinea pigs for experimental activities. Even when you look at every aspect, they're using us as guinea pigs. Yes, there is some good, a percentage of some good, but not all of it is done with good intentions. You look at agriculture, they're destroying African agriculture by introducing those GMOs. You plant your seed in one season, your soil is finished. We used to have seeds that we can use from one season to the other. The introduction of GMOs through these agencies, USAID is one of them. We are destroying Africa in a massive way. A little good is coming out, but by and large, the end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you have been in Africa and also other parts of the world, show us your success rate. You claim you are helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. But I also turn around and say, African governments, why do you need this little aid to assist you in providing proper health care, proper education? The average African government can afford to provide those services for their people. Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. One situation that people don't realize, post-World War, when the US came up with the Marshall Plan, what they don't tell you is that the contribution through exploitation of African minerals was actually the biggest funder of the European Recovery Plan, ERP, aka the Marshall Plan. US contributed $13 billion, which is now present day $175 billion, which, by the way, the American taxpayer must be paid back. Nobody's asking for that money back. But what they don't tell you is that Africa, through exploitation of its resources by the Europeans, was actually a much, much bigger contribution to the European recovery post-World War II. Nobody talks about that. Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor? Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed? I think this is a wake-up call for the African leaders. To the same extent that President Trump is saying USA first, African leaders must also say Africa first. This is a wake-up call to the African leaders to take inventory of what is really happening in their countries. Do they really need the peanuts that are coming in as aid? What is really going out? If I may use the example of what happened in Niger when the government decided they were going to take over the mining of their uranium. The French companies that were mining the uranium were paying the government 80 cents a kilo for the uranium, and then turning around and selling the uranium to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that one move from the Nigerian government to say we are now going to take ownership of our own uranium, they went from realizing about $1 billion in uranium resources to over 300 billion a year. Do you realize what I'm talking about? No amount of NGO could bring that kind of money. And this is only one mineral. Now imagine the country taking inventory of all their minerals and benefiting from their natural resources like the rest of the countries in the Western world. That is what African leaders need to look at. Let me tell you, we need to look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. President Traore is standing up. He is saying the natural resources.
Welcome to the Real African Voice, the platform where Africa speaks for itself. Here, we bring you raw stories, real conversations, and unapologetic truths straight from the heart of the continent and its diaspora. Whether it's culture, history, current affairs, or everyday life, this is where truth echoes louder than noise. Real talk, real people, real Africa, one continent, a million stories, one voice that speaks them all. Make sure to subscribe, tap the notification bell, and stick around because this is just the beginning. New videos, real talk, and the Real African Voice every week. Let's grow together. Disclaimer: everything shared on the Real African Voice is based on personal opinions, cultural insights, and real experiences. We're here to inform, inspire, and spark real conversations, not to offend or push any agenda. If you vibe with raw, authentic African stories and bold discussions, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more powerful updates. Respect is key here, so let's keep it real, keep it respectful, and keep learning together.
Of Burkina Faso. Niger is doing the same thing. Mali is doing the same thing. Every leader must look at what's happening in the Sahel nations to say, like anybody else, you must take care of your people. You have your natural resources. You have everything you need to take care of your people. Why do you continue to be beggars? Look at what is being brought in by not only USAID, but all the NGOs in your country. It's peanuts. It's a joke that the African leaders should continue to be beggars of peanuts when you are looking and allowing billions to get out of your country year in and year out, if not trillions, in natural resources that your people should be benefiting from. It is a wake-up call for African leaders to wake up and say, President Trump is saying, US first, America first. You too must say, your country first, because you have everything it takes. It is a joke. It is embarrassing to see I have not seen any African leader cry over USAID leaving. I can tell you for a fact, the average African leader privately is celebrating the exit of USAID because they know what is really going on. To be honest with you, why should African leaders care? Why should Trump care about Africa? He shouldn't care about Africa to the same extent that the African leaders really shouldn't care about a relationship either. If the relationship can be worked out, that's wonderful. But if President Trump is saying, I have a mandate from my own people to take care of my people, and I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my people, African leaders need to take that same position. You see, it takes two to tango. If President Trump does not want a relationship with Africa, Africans shouldn't be begging for it. I'm hoping that this will translate into African leaders looking from within, because they don't really need to keep looking outside. They have what it takes. It's a wake-up call, just like what happened during COVID. It was a wake-up call for African leaders to realize that you must begin to look within Africa to take care of yourself. When the chips were down, the world walked away from Africa during COVID. So that's a reality. No supplies were coming to Africa, Africans were not manufacturing anything, and African leaders were forced to look from within. This, I'm hoping, is another wake-up call where African leaders also begin to realize we must look from within. But let me underscore this. The average African leader and majority of leaders of developing world, I can tell you, they are celebrating the exit of USAID, and we hope that there will be exits of many other NGOs that are carrying out nefarious activities in Africa and anywhere else in the developing world in order to further the agendas of their governments, which is to continuously destabilize, divide, and conquer. Africans must take a position and protect their turf. China wants to come and exploit Africa, they'll get away with it to the extent that Africans allow them. The United States wants to come and exploit Africa, they'll get away with it to the extent that the Africans will allow them. The question is, does Africa have an African position when they come to the negotiating table with the world? The answer right now is no. Africa must unite. Africa must speak with one voice, and Africa must go to the world stage with one voice, one agenda, one plan that the world will have to respond. But as long as Africa is going to the world as bitty little countries, as Togo, as Eswatini, as Guinea-Bissau, Africa is fighting a losing game. Africa must unite, and Africa must speak with one voice. That is the only way a strong, united Africa can take a rightful place on the world stage and be respected and stop the exploitation. If you go back to colonization, if you go back to the Christianity and how it was introduced, how we were trained to be subservient, in Africa, the rules of the game were the same. I think that what was done to brainwash black people around the world, long before they even left Africa, we are still suffering from that legacy of colonization, the legacy of slavery, where the people in power, they themselves don't believe they can do it. We still have leaders who believe you can't make it unless you're working with white people. We have individuals who think only something brought in by white people is what's likely to succeed. With that kind of mentality, it is a very difficult battle. Our battle to succeed, to unite as the African continent, it is a battle of the mind. And each and every African must realize that we are defeated where it matters the most, which is the mind. Brainwashed to the core. Brainwashed to not believe in ourselves and what we can do as individuals. Wherein lies the problem. I think what's happening in the United States through President Trump is going to make them realize that this is what you need to do. You're going to have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. President Trump is saying, I have a mandate, America first. So you Africans, are you going to sit back and just wait and see the next move that President Trump is going to make? Or are you going to also say, I have a mandate from my people and I'm going to do what I need to do? Take inventory of what you have in your country. Use it and use it wisely. No more begging. You don't need to have anybody filling the gaps in your educational system. You don't need anybody filling the gaps in your healthcare system. You don't need anybody creating initiatives in the most remote parts of your country because they claim that you, the government, cannot have access to that. How can somebody come from all the way from the United States, all the way from Britain, and access the most remote part of your country that you in your country cannot access? It is the most stupid thing. When you listen to the justifications and the explanations as to why they are there, it's a joke, and this needs to stop.
Just finally, Ambassador, when you look at U.S. behavior retracting, We've just got a minute left, but I would love to know from you, what do you think about the UN? What do you think about the International Court of Justice? Because probably the contraction that we're talking about is going to happen in a lot of institutions. Do you worry that Africa will be worse off without those institutions?
No, those institutions were created after the Second World War. United Nations, it took 4 weeks to create the United Nations. Why? In order to help the recovery of Europe. The World Bank, the IMF, it took 3 weeks to create them after the Second World War in order to aid in the recovery of Europe from its own self-implosion and destruction. So no. These institutions were not created to benefit the developing world. To the contrary, they were built to steal from the developing world. Their success is based on the failures of the developing nations where they have been stealing from. So no. We must celebrate what President Trump is doing by exiting the United Nations, by exiting the World Health Organization. We need the U.S. to exit the World Trade Organization because they are doing nothing on the African end. They are giving a blind eye to blatant exploitations, unequal, uneven trade policies that are hurting Africa.